HaMafkid etzel chavero behema o kelim. If someone gives over to his friend to watch either an animal or vessels, venignevu o she'avdu, and that animal or vessel got stolen or lost, shilem velo ratza lishava, this watcher, the shomer, chose to pay back the owner because he didn't want to swear. Shehare amru, for they once said, shomer chinam nishba v'yotze, that if a unpaid watcher, a shomer chinam, swears that he wasn't negligent, he's yotze, he's exempt from paying. But this shomer, in our case, did not want to swear. He paid instead. Nimsa haganav, if the robber is caught, meshalem tashlumei kefil, he must pay 2 times the item. If it was an animal, tavach umachar, if he slaughtered the animal or he sold the animal, meshalem tashlumei arba'a v'chamisha, he has to pay 4 or 5 times the cost of the animal. This is his penalty payment. The question now is, lemi meshalem, who does he pay? The answer, the Mishnah says, lemi she'apikadon etzlo, he has to pay the shomer, because the shomer chose to pay back the original owner and not go to court. So therefore it's as if he owns the item, and if the robber is caught, he has to pay the penalty payment to the shomer. The second case of the Mishnah is the opposite. Nishba velo ratza leshalem. Let's say the shomer chose to swear and he didn't want to pay. He didn't want to pay back the owner for the item that got stolen. He wanted to swear and exempt himself. Then, nimsa haganav, if the robber is caught, meshalem tashlumei kefil, he has to pay double. Tavach umachar, and if it was an animal and he slaughtered it and sold it, meshalem tashlumei arba chamisha, he has to pay 4 or 5 times. However, in this case, lemi meshalem, who does the robber have to pay? Leba'al apikadon. He has to pay the original owner of the object. Because since the shomer chose to swear and exempt himself from paying, so therefore the original owner still owns the item. And therefore, he receives the penalty payment from the robber. And that concludes the Mishnah. The Gemara opens with an inquiry question. We know this from the words lama. And its question is as follows. Lama le lemitnei behema, velama le lemitnei kelim. Why did the Mishnah above have to use both a case of behema and also a case of kelim? It could have used just a general item, or could have used one of each. Why did it both have to say behema and kelim? That's the Gemara's opening inquiry question. The Gemara answers, tzrichei. They are both needed. Each one is very special. And the Gemara begins to explain. De'i tana behema. Let's say that the Mishnah only wrote the case of an animal. Hava amina. I would have thought that if it only wrote the case of an animal, behema hu demakni lekvela, that only by a case of an animal will the owner convey, give, or allow the penalty payment to go to the shomer if he chooses to pay him back for the item. Why? Mishum de nafish tircha le'iula ulapuka. Because when you watch an animal, there's a lot of tircha. There's a lot of effort involved. Nafish tircha le'iula ulapuka. There's a lot of effort in taking in the animal and bringing out the animal. So since the shomer put a lot of effort into watching the animal, therefore the owner doesn't mind him receiving the penalty payment from the ganav. Aval kelim, however, vessels, delo nafish tirchayu, that is involved very little tircha, effort. When a person watches a vessel, there is no effort whatsoever involved in taking care of it. I will say that the owner will say he doesn't deserve to get the penalty payment. He didn't do anything to watch it. He just took it and he put it into a cupboard. or a closet. He doesn't deserve the penalty payment. That's what I would think. I would think that the owner would not want the shomer to receive the penalty payment if he just watched the keli. Therefore, our Mishnah had to specifically tell us, kelim too, that even though you might think that he doesn't deserve it because he didn't put any effort, he will still get the penalty payment from the robber. That is what happened that's what would have happened, that's what we would have thought if the Gemara only said behema. What about the other case? Ve'i tana kelim. If the Mishnah only wrote the case of vessels, hava amina, I would have thought, kelimu demamakni lekvela. It's only by vessels the owner will allow the robber, the shomer, to receive the penalty payment from the robber. You know why? Mishum delo nafish kiflayu. Because the value of the kefel, of the penalty payment, the amount of the penalty payment is not a lot. It's only twice. So therefore the owner says, it doesn't bother me that he only gets twice. Aval behema. But by the case of an animal, dechi tavach umachar, if the robber was to slaughter and sell it, mishalem tashumei dalid vehe, he would receive 4 or 5 times the owner, the shomer will receive 4 or 5 times a penalty payment from the robber. The robber has to pay 4 or 5 times if he does that. The owner is going to say, hey, I don't want him receiving 4 or 5 times the value of the cow. That's a lot of money. I don't want him to get that. Therefore, I will say that the owner is not going to want to give him that kefel. Tzricha. Therefore, we need also to include the case of behema. Because I would have thought, if I didn't include the case of behema, he wouldn't want him to get the kefel. So therefore, our Mishnah does write the word behema to teach us that even though we may not want to give the shomer the 4 or 5 times penalty payment because it's a lot of money, he still gets it. Matkif la Rami Bar Chama. Comes along Rami Bar Chama and he has an objection. We know it's an objection because it begins with the word matkif. Whenever you see the word matkif, we know it's an objection. Matkif la Rami Bar Chama. Wait a second. Veha en adam makne davar shelo ba la'olam. A person cannot give over an item to someone if it doesn't exist yet. If something is not in existence, then there's no way I can tell that person that in the future I'm giving you this item when it doesn't exist. There's only one person, though, who does say that you could give over something to someone that doesn't exist yet. And his name is Rabbi Meir. However, there's a condition to that. Va'afilu le Rabbi Meir, even according to Rabbi Meir, de Amar, who said, Adam makne davar shelo ba la'olam, that a person is able to give over something to someone that doesn't yet exist. Hani mili, this is only in the case, kegon perot dekel, like fruits from a palm tree, or any fruit rather, de avide de atu, which we know for sure are going to come. So in the case of fruits from a tree, Rabbi Meir would agree that since we know fruits grow every year, we can give a person fruits that are going to grow next year because you know they're going to come. Aval hacha, but in our case, right now, in the case of our Mishnah, mi yemar de migneva, who said that at the moment that the owner gives this item to the watcher to watch, who says that it was going to get stolen? Ve'im timse lomar de migneva, and if you say that it is going to get stolen, mi yemar de mishtakach ganav, who says that we're going to even find the robber? Ve'im mishtakach ganav, and if the robber is caught, let's say he is caught, mi yemar de mishalem, how do we know that the robber is even going to pay this penalty payment that we are now giving over to the shomer? Dilma modeh umiftar. Maybe the robber is going to admit modeh, he's going to admit to his crime, umiftar, and he won't have to pay the penalty payment. So how can the owner allow the shomer to take the penalty payment from the robber when at the moment that he gives the item to him to watch, it doesn't belong to the watcher, it doesn't belong to the shomer? How can you give him something that doesn't exist? The whole situation doesn't exist at that moment. That is the objection of Rami Bar Chama. Comes along Rava, Amar Rava. Rava says, well, we have to reinterpret this Mishnah. Na'aseh ke'omer lo. We make it as if he tells him. We make it as if the owner tells the shomer, the watcher, lekshetiganev, if the item was to get stolen, vetirtse, and you wish, uchalemeni, to pay me, hare parati kenuya lecha me'achshav. Behold, my cow that I'm giving to you right now to watch, if it was to get stolen and you want to pay me for it, it belongs to you from this moment that I'm giving it to you to watch, from day number 1. And therefore, if any of this was to actually happen, it is as if it's in the shomer's property from the beginning. And therefore, he has every right to receive the double payment, or the 4 payment, or the 5 payment from the robber, since he actually owns the item. Because this was a condition made from the beginning, according to Rava. And this is how we interpret our Mishnah. Comes along Rabbi Zera, and he has an objection. We know it's an objection because it's, again, the word matkif. Matkif la Rabbi Zera. Comes Rabbi Zera and says, wait a second. You mean to tell me that the owner tells the shomer that if all this comes true, it's going to belong to you from day number 1, from this moment that I'm giving you? Ihachi, if that's true, if so, afilu gizotea uvladotea nami. Then the shomer should also keep the gizot. The gizot is the wool. Uvladotea. Vlad is the offspring. If that's true that it belongs to the shomer from day number 1, he should also keep the wool and the offspring that are going to be produced after day number 1. Alama Tanya, but why is there a braita that says chutz migizotea uvladotea? Why is there a braita that says that the shomer does not keep the wool and the offspring? That's a problem. Because again, if it really belonged to him from day 1, he should keep any baby and any wool that comes out after that first day. But there's a clear braita that says that he doesn't keep it. Elama Rabbi Zera. So therefore Rabbi Zera alters Rava's answer slightly. And he says, Naseh ke'omer lo chutz migizotea uvladotea. He adds another condition. He says that the owner tells the shomer that if it gets stolen and you want to pay me, it belongs to you from day number 1, except for the wool and the children. That you don't get to keep. That I keep. That's what the owner tells the shomer. So the Gemara asks, my Pascha, why does the owner really want to keep the gizot and the vladot? Why does he want to keep the wool and the children? Why is this so special? The Gemara answers, Stama de milta shevacha de ata me'alma, avid inish de makne. Whenever there's profit that comes me'alma from the outside, a person has no problem giving it over to someone. In our case, that would be profit coming from the robber. The robber has to pay 2 times or 4 times or 5 times. That's profit that comes from outside. If that's the case, the owner doesn't mind the shomer to get that type of profit because it didn't come from him, it came from outside. However, shevacha de megufa, profit that comes from the goof of the item, from the actual body of the item, lo avid inish de makne. A person does not want to give that over. And therefore the owner doesn't want to give the wool and the children because the wool and the children are something sentimental to him. Why? Because they are part of the original animal that he once had that is no longer there. It's kind of like a little memory that he has of that animal and he doesn't want to part with that. So therefore he tells the shomer, you can keep any penalty payment that comes from the robber. That's fine because that comes from the outside. But I don't want you keeping any of the wool or any of the children, because that's part of the goof. That's profit that comes from directly from the animal. Ika de Amri. Ika de Amri is another version or another answer based on the first objection that we had, on the objection of Rami Bar Chama. To remind you that Rami Bar Chama had an objection and said, how do we know all this was going to take place? This is something that's not in existence yet. At the moment that the shomer gave the item, at the moment that the owner gave the shomer the item to watch, the shomer didn't own it. None of this took place. So how can he give over a penalty payment if at the moment he gave it over to him, he wasn't the owner of it? So we originally answered that Rava said that he made a condition that if all this was to happen, it belongs to you from right now, day number 1. But according to the second answer, the Ika de Amri answer, Rava gives a different answer. He's saying, Amar Rava, Naseh ke'omer lo, he's as if he tells him, Lekesheti ganev v'tirtzeu shalemeni, if the item gets stolen and you wish to pay me, then samuch lignevata knuya lecha. It belongs to you from the moment before it gets stolen. 1 second before it gets stolen, that's when it belongs to you. This is the second answer, remember. The first answer, he tells him, it belongs to you from day 1, from the moment I gave it to you to watch. Here he's saying, it belongs to you 1 moment before it gets stolen. So now, what's the difference between the answers? Well, that's the Gemara's next question, the next inquiry question. My benaihu. My benaihu means, what's the difference between the 2 answers? Why did Rava have to give me another answer? The first answer from the moment he gave it to him, and the second answer from the second before it gets stolen. So, in fact, there are 2 differences. Ika benaihu. The Gemara says, these are the differences. The first difference is, Kusha de Rabbi Zera. The question of Rabbi Zera. If you look back, if you remember, Rabbi Zera said, wait a second, what about the children and the vladot? What about the children and, the gizot and the vladot, the wool and the children? Now that question of Rabbi Zera about what about the wool and the children only applies if he told him it belongs to you from day number 1. Because after day number 1, it's very much possible that children could be born, baby cows, baby sheep, and wool can be born. And wool can grow. So therefore, this question applies according to the first answer. But according to the second answer, where we say it belongs to the shomer 1 second before it gets stolen, no baby cow or baby sheep is going to be born 1 second before it gets stolen. And no wool is going to grow 1 second before it gets stolen. So therefore, that question of Rabbi Zera about what about the wool and the children, that question doesn't apply according to the second answer. Because no baby is going to be born that split second, and no wool is going to grow. That is the first difference. Inami, another difference, dekaima ba'agam. What would happen if the cow or the animal got stolen next to a lake? Why do I care if it's next to a lake? Because lake is public property. Lake doesn't belong to anybody. So if the cow was by the lake when it gets stolen, and a second before it got stolen, it was next to the lake because that's where it was. That means it was never in the property of the shomer when it got stolen. And hence, therefore, the shomer never owned the object. Because in order for you to own the object, it has to be in your possession. It has to be in your property. But if the cow was by the lake's not your property. So therefore, the shomer never owned the cow because a second before it got stolen, it wasn't in his property. And therefore, if the shomer never owned the cow, that means he gets no right to the penalty payment. The robber has to pay him 0. He gets nothing because he was never the true owner. In the first answer, where it belonged to him from day number 1, we don't have this problem. Even if it did get stolen by a lake, it would still belong to the shomer because it belonged to him from day number 1, from the moment that he gave it to him. But in the second answer, when it belongs to him 1 second before it gets stolen, therefore, if it gets stolen by a lake, it was never in his property, and therefore, the robber would not pay him the double payment since he was never the owner of the animal. And that is the end of the sugya.